Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the concluding session of the S4YE Innovation Exchange and Partners Summit. My name is Ifat Sharif. I'm the Global Director of Social Protection and Jobs Global Practice at the World Bank. You've all heard about solutions for youth employment, or in short, S4YE, over the last 2 days. You've all, S4YE is the World Bank's flagship partnership on youth employment. It is a network that brings together multiple stakeholders like the private sector, donors, governments, foundations, NGOs, and youth themselves to support youth employment, the whole youth employment ecosystem for better outcomes. S4YE aims to achieve this by highlighting innovations, facilitating knowledge exchange, like the summit, for instance, and harnessing the power of partnerships that it facilitates. It is an important platform for us because, as I mentioned, different actors can collaborate on this exchange and learn from each other to create more and better opportunities for young people around the world. Over the last 2 days, we've had over 1,000 registered participants joining this summit, which is tremendous. And as many of you who've participated have seen, the summit featured panels, sessions, and demos from tech leaders, governments, youth, and artists who use AI in various domains. We had a very interesting and energetic session on jobs in the creative sector, where young artists shared and demoed how they are using artificial intelligence in music and films to grow their art businesses. We've also had several short Spark sessions, spotlighting solutions on digital jobs, skilling solutions, health, agriculture, job matching, and many more. And we hope that you enjoyed the summit and learned something new and useful. I certainly did. And in this fireside chat, we will learn how technology such as artificial intelligence and generative AI in particular can help us achieve our shared mission on youth skills and inclusion. We will hear, it's my pleasure that we will hear from senior leaders of the World Bank and Microsoft Philanthropies on how we could incubate novel ideas and collaborate to address youth employment challenges and eventually help to scale up solutions. So I'm very pleased to welcome to this fireside chat Mamta Murthy, who's the Vice President for Human Development from the World Bank. Mamta has been at the bank for close to 28 years. In her current role, she oversees the global practices for education, health, nutrition, and population, gender, social protection and jobs, as well as the human capital project. And joining us from Microsoft is Naria Santa Lucia, General Manager for Digital Inclusion and Community Engagement at Microsoft Philanthropies. Naria oversees Microsoft Global Philanthropic Strategy, grant investments, and partnerships in digital skills. Naria is also the current chair of the S4YE Steering Committee, and she has been since 2020. So welcome to you both, Mamta and Naria, and let's get started. So let me start with Mamta. So Mamta, but let's start by looking at what everyone is talking about these days, AI, especially generative AI, and how it will impact the job market. And so, Mamta, I was wondering, what do you think is the potential of these new technologies in enhancing youth employment opportunities? And it would be great to sort of get some highlights from you on some of these opportunities that you see. Over to you, Mamta.
Thank you so much, Ifat, and for having me here. And I'm delighted that we can have this fireside chat on what I consider to be a really important topic, which is solutions for youth employment. I just want to give a little bit of context. Developing countries are very youthful. So between now and 2030, we will have over 1 billion young people enter the labor market. Some of them will go into education and training, higher education. Many of them will actually start working. But if the level of job creation remains at what it is presently, there won't be jobs for many of these young people. And I think that is why partnerships like this one, Solutions for Youth Employment, are so important, because we have to think about employment and self-employment completely differently. And this is where the role of innovation, digital technologies, things like AI become very important. So within that broader context, I want to come to your question. What is the potential of new technologies to support job creation and to help young people be a part of a growing, innovating economy? I think that the potential is enormous. Let me just begin by speaking about digital technologies, and then I want to come to AI. Digital technologies are really changing the way the world works. I like to give the example of the gig economy. This is something that we're all aware of, but I don't think we're quite aware of how much employment it is generating in developing countries. Ifat, you know this, but we launched a report on the gig economy recently based on new data from low and middle income countries, and it's striking that now in 15% of employment, and this would include self-employment and part-time employment, 15% of employment in developing countries is the gig economy. This means typically young people, oftentimes women, working from home, connecting via a digital platform, and providing their skills to employers, or providing their skills to final consumers via a digital platform. So this has completely changed the opportunities that exist for people. It's also quite an inclusive approach. It's true that you need digital skills in order to access this kind of work, but many people can do this work from home. They could be women, for example, who are not able to work outside the home. It could be people with other restrictions. There's been a huge opening up of opportunities. I was in Pakistan earlier this year, and I was introduced to two entrepreneurs who have created a health company. It's called Sehat Kahani, and what it does is it puts doctors, female doctors who can only work from home, in touch with people who need medical services. And then there's an intermediation, and there's also a small payment, but this has completely opened up the market for medical services for some groups of people. Now let's come to AI and generative AI. I think it will both create jobs, it will destroy jobs, and it will change the nature of existing jobs. There are going to be new jobs in programming, in data entry, in training the AI tools. People's jobs themselves may change. Let me give you the example of telemedicine, which is now becoming much more common in developing countries. If you want to use telemedicine, it means that as a nurse stationed at a community health post, you're going to have to acquire a different set of skills. It's going to change the nature of your job. So that's that's an example of a job that is going to change. And then they're going to be completely new jobs that we haven't thought about. And these are going to be jobs that people create because of the potential of generative AI. Let me stop at that and hand it back to you.
No, thanks. Thank you, Mamta. I mean, I think it's great to sort of think about some of the highlights of the opportunities that new technology offers, but at the same time also highlighting the fact that new jobs will be created. Well, some jobs are going to be destroyed, but what you're saying is that there's a change happening in also the kind of skills people will need to adjust to this new technologies coming on board, and some technologies also getting obsolete at the same time. So let me bring Naria here. Naria, Microsoft has been, of course, a leader in technological advancements like generative AI. In your work, what are the specific skills young people you think your work tells you will need to build from the perspective of an employer like Microsoft And if you can also think about, how we make sure that marginalized groups, especially poorer youth, who often are not able to access some of these technologies, how can they take advantage of these new technologies? Over to you, Naria.
Yep. No, thank you so much. And I first want to say thank you, Ifat, for this opportunity. Thank you, Mamta, for your words. Really, could not agree more. +1 on everything that you mentioned. And I'm happy to kind of build on that, or try to build on your remarks. And I also just want to really thank the S4YE team. They've done an amazing job over the past 2 years putting together a great event. And then I want to thank all the youth who are really logging in, engaging, because you are the ones who are going to, unlock all the potential of this technology in ways that we haven't even dreamed up yet. So I just want to say, keep going, try it out. I'm so happy that, that all the young people are engaged. So I think it might help a little bit just to frame where I sit within Microsoft. So my role is within the philanthropies team, and everybody across the company will always start with our mission, which is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And our team, what we try to really do is think about how can we stand at the bridge so that, whether there is a business justification that may not make sense for Microsoft, how can we help to extend the technology to every community and to every individual? So it's just really an honor to be able to really think and work in community, listen to community. And one of our main areas that we have been investing a lot in the past is in skilling, and of course in youth skilling. And we're thinking a lot about the changing nature of skills. It's very interesting to remember that AI is actually not new. AI has been with us for a long time, for decades, and has shifted. When you use a smartphone, when you start typing and it says, hey, do you want to fill in with these words? Those things are all AI. The key difference being that since last November with ChatGPT, there's a way to really take it and use it like never before, so that everybody can really use and leverage this generative AI tool. And I think that's a very exciting time, but we're also just learning like all of you. So it's just wonderful to be a part of these conversations and to learn, like figure out, what are some of the issues, what are some of the fears, how can we take all those signals and come back and really help people unlock this tool and technology like any other tool and technology. So a couple of things, and Mamta noted this too, we do believe that every job, we used to say every job is a digital job, right? And that doesn't matter what sector you're in, you don't have to be in technology, but every job will need digital skills. And I think we're going to rapidly come to a world where every job will need AI fluency skills, generative AI fluency skills as well. Last year at Davos, Richard Baldwin from the Geneva Graduate Institute kind of said this thing, which I do agree with, which is, AI won't take your job, but somebody using AI will take your job. So I think we have a responsibility to really think about how can we rapidly help people in their work and in their everyday lives use these tools. And that includes, Ifat, to your question about, maybe youth that are furthest from opportunity, there needs to be some infrastructure in place. There needs to be electricity. There needs to be the ability to have internet connection. That's really key and table stakes. And once we have that, we need to make sure we can democratize these skills so that everybody can use them. Another thing that, Mamta, you noted too, is that there will be new jobs, and we're already seeing these new jobs like prompt engineering. We're seeing other roles like AI ethicists, AI project managers that we may not have ever seen. And of course, we're going to have more data and ML and machine learning specialists as well. And those jobs will continue to grow. And I think our responsibility, we think about at Microsoft, but I would call on all of us together to think, hey, we're at a new point and a new starting point. Who's going to have those jobs, right? And can we make sure that it's going to be a diverse group of people from all different backgrounds? Because if we don't have that diversity, especially with this technology, there's more opportunity to build in bias because of the way that the models are trained. So I think a call to action, not only to help people get the new jobs, but make sure that lots of different people have access to those jobs. And then, of course, there is this potential for lots of jobs, for more than 50% of those skills potentially to be augmented so much that those roles may go away. I think we're still beginning to understand exactly what that is, but the more we can share data together across the private sector, across public sector, across World Bank and other, IGOs, NGOs, so that we can quickly identify those roles and then upskill individuals into new opportunities. I think that's something else that we can really do together. So I guess, one, just really quickly, a couple plugs, because as we were trying to pivot really quickly, we launched 3 like pieces of work that I think folks can take advantage of. Number one is a new career essentials certificate in generative AI. It's available for free at opportunity.linkedin.com. And it really just goes into the basics of AI 101. Like, what is it? What is a large language model? What's a transformer? What's a prompt? And kind of helps people at least get comfortable with what is generative AI and think about some of the use cases in our everyday work. We've also launched a challenge with data.org, which I think is really interesting. One of the main opportunities for generative AI will actually be, I think, using the AI to learn, right? Whether that's a tutor that's independently going to be able to chat with you while you're going through courseware, or whether that's a way to flip the classroom where, young people can learn outside and then come back in the classroom and like focus on project-based learning and learning together, all of those things. So I think what we end up doing is launching a challenge to see what are the ways that we could use AI to upskill at scale. And then finally, we've been hosting these AI explained events, which are all available now online, so that people can kind of learn learn in community together, kind of what is AI, and really move from that fear to FOMO, to the fear of missing out. But I want to underscore all of this because you asked about the skills. Because what we're seeing, not only is there, of course, the growth in these like generative AI skills, but really the growth in the need of human skills. So more and more, it's going to be important that people know how to collaborate, that people will do creative thinking, that people can use critical thinking skills as well. Because as the generative AI can do more of the rote tasks and like the rote research, the quote unquote drudgery of work, I think that's going to leave humans the ability to do more human things and work together. And so no matter what we roll out together, I think we need to make sure that those skills are especially top of mind as well.
This is fantastic, Naria. Thanks so much. I mean, I think, what you said, the quote, like AI won't take your job, but someone using AI will, completely resonates. And it kind of really ties in nicely what you're saying about the importance of these foundational human skills that are going to be needed, and regardless of how technology shapes us. And also your focus on the need for investments in infrastructure, thinking through what are the new jobs, who will get these new jobs, and when will these jobs come, sort of leads me to my next question to Mamta, actually. Mamta, how do you see, given what you heard from Naria, how do you see the role of the World Bank in fostering some of these, the take-up of some of these kind of wider innovations that are happening in youth employment, some of the things that Naria mentioned? And there's, of course, certification. There are lots of innovations happening, especially around these new technologies. So the role for the World Bank in this space.
Thank you, Ifat. So there's a lot that the World Bank is already doing in this space, and that's what's so exciting when you see this sort of transformation happening. We do a lot of work on training and in higher education. And this is, when I say we do work, I mean we support governments through financial contributions, and through technical advice on higher education and on training. And there's a huge need for just basic training, but also upskilling of existing workers. And so I would see this as a continuing area of emphasis. Now, you can think of higher education and training as really the top of a pyramid. Before you get to that stage, there's basic education, there's foundational learning, there's secondary school completion, all of which are areas that the World Bank works on and will need to continue to work on. while we want to talk about the new opportunities, I think we can't forget that the world is off track when it comes to some of the basic sustainable development goals, which have to do with primary school completion, which have to do with getting gender equality in completion of education, which have to do with getting more women into the labor force. So that underlying agenda is going to remain very strong, even in the face of these changes. And actually, these changes, digital technologies, AI, improve the potential. If handled appropriately, they improve the potential for achieving some of these goals. Let me take the example that Naria gave, which is the ability of AI to provide more personalized instruction to people, to help them fill the gaps in their knowledge so that they can be better equipped for the labor market. One big potential is the use of AI to train teachers. We know that there's a huge shortage of primary and secondary school teachers, right? There's huge potential for AI to help train teachers and to upskill the knowledge that teachers have, so that we can have more effective instruction in the classroom, and we can have more kids who are able to learn what they need. Actually, the potential of remote instruction and AI as a part of remote instruction, just for expanding access to tertiary education, is enormous. So I think there are ways in which these new technologies both pose challenges, and I'm going to come to those in a minute, but also increase the opportunity for moving faster towards some of the goals that the world wants to reach. And the World Bank has a role to play in helping broker these solutions with others. This is not something we do alone, but broker these solutions with others. Now, what are some of the challenges? Well, you can't have the use of this technology if you don't have the basics, if you don't have running water, 24-hour electricity, you don't have schools and classrooms for all children, right? So there's that challenge that needs to be addressed. And then there's how do we use these technologies to make most effectively so that we can make progress on the goals that we have. So I actually see this as a very exciting moment to be at the World Bank, because we work on both the foundational things, the foundational learning, the basic education, the basic digital connectivity, the basic infrastructure, and we have the opportunity to partner with others to use new technologies to maybe deliver that acceleration, right, that's needed to get to where the world needs to be.
Thanks, Mamta. And I think this is critically important given the scale that you reminded us earlier, right? I mean, the needs are so massive that it is with partners, with governments, and their ability to reach these large numbers, and the importance of investing in the basic education infrastructure, if you will. So infrastructure is not just physical infrastructure, but also the classrooms, the teachers, and the potential for AI to help deliver basic literacy is fundamental. You know, it's fundamental. But I want to sort of come back to what Naria you mentioned about also looking to, because the challenges are so great, Mamta, as you mentioned. That's, you know, I was intrigued by your idea, Naria, about maybe using youth as being co-creators of solutions to the problems they face. And so what are some of the, how do we take advantage of young people's creativity, energy, and aspirations, if you will, to find solutions? How do we support them?
I love that question. And I bet many of us listening today first heard about ChatGPT and DALL-E. I know the first time I ever heard about DALL-E was not at work, was my kids, right? And they were making all kinds of things like months and like almost months ago, months before other people were. And there's something really special about young people, right? Because they are digital natives in many, and especially in the global north, but I think in the global south as well, many, many digital natives who can immediately not only think about the specific like have the lived experience of being a young person and know that this planet is going to be, for them for the long run. But they can also, they don't have as much of that fear of like thinking, oh, well, this, technology X, Y, and Z. They like immediately can come to some solutions. Um, so I do really love this thought of like how can we flip this on its head, do it in a different way where we ask the young people, right, to really come up with these ideas and lead the way. One of the things I think is you're really telling, right, Ifat? You mentioned that there are 1 billion young people who will enter the job market by 2030, and we have to also remember that more than half of them, I think by the World Bank's report, or almost half of them, are actually in Southeast Asia and in Africa, and there is no better like resource than human talent, right? And I think that is just going to become more and more important, especially as I was saying, like these technologies are going to let us kind of free ourselves from the digital debt of work and really focus and help humans like accelerate and like put the human skills behind it. So with that, like we're going to have to unlock all this talent and make sure that we can leverage all this human talent and potential in young people if we're going to be able to even come close to thinking about solving SDGs or even short and long term problems as well. One of the things I think that we can do rapidly, I think, as a company and as an industry, as private sector individuals, and even in the public sector too, is make sure that we make it as frictionless as possible for young people to get these tools into their hands, right? And the technology into their hands. And that does include, Mamta, you were saying about some of the infrastructure needs. Like those things are real, and I'm not trying to minimize those. And so can the bank work with the public sector, work with the private sector to think about how can we help move on some of those infrastructure issues, and can we use the AI to help us with that as well? But once we have that in place, now our CTO Kevin Scott at Microsoft, he's said it really well that the new coding language is natural language, is English or whatever language, Spanish. That's really fascinating, right? So once as a young entrepreneur, instead of like learning Python or Java in order to build, your product, now you can go to a Power Platform or whatever service and literally and use GitHub Copilot and create a website and create a payment platform. I mean, it is some pretty incredible stuff that people will be able to do. And I loved reading in the New York Times last week about the young woman from Senegal who won the AI challenge. She loved playing video games. That's what she enjoyed doing, and then was able to create, a big AI solution for, an agriculture use case. So I just think that getting the tools into the hands of young people and as fast as possible, and with the training is really important. The other thing is to very much think about how can we mentor and coach young people and make sure that that we open our networks to different individuals from the networks that we're used to. And I think this is something that our partner over at LinkedIn, our colleagues, do really well, is that they think their whole use case is about building a social network, building a professional network. And we all know that it's always like who that will open a door for you. And I think when we, have kind of individuals who are from a certain group, they may not open doors for everybody. So I want to just challenge everybody from the private sector or public sector or adult who's maybe listening. Can you open your network to a young person who may not have been in that network before? Can you step up to mentor a young person with their great ideas? Like you will learn, of course, so much more from them than you may offer them in the long run. And then finally, I do really think that all of us together, like this is going to be a multi-sectoral approach. And Mamta, you noted that too, that we will need to kind of work in conjunction together with IGOs, with the private sector, with NGOs, and with the public sector as well together if we're going to really move to help these 1 billion young people reach their full potential that it's completely that they are all capable of reaching.
Thanks, Nari. I mean, I think what I took away is that the emphasis on frictionless access to technology, critically important. It is allowing, and I've also seen these story after story, youth creating their own jobs often their dream jobs, which is it's a completely whole different world from the world when I grew up, and thinking of jobs was so different. But this also requires some responsibilities in terms of what you're saying. You mentioned mentoring youth, but there's also some of the risks, right, that this new world of technology exposes us. And so this is where I wanted to come to Mamta again. Of course, there's all these opportunities, but the risks that are there. So, for example, just last week, the UK government brought governments and tech companies to discuss the dangers and the risks that AI might pose as well. So Mamta, what are your thoughts of maybe how can the bank think about some of these risks and sort of maybe steer countries into investing in the right sort of technologies, safeguards and guardrails to allow us to minimize some of the risks that may even come with this massive opportunity?
Thank you, Ifat. I think the first thing we need to do as the World Bank is we need to be quite humble. We're actually not that well equipped as yet to be advising countries on how to handle this wave of new technology. So I think we need to upskill ourselves in order to be better positioned to think about these issues and advise governments. But if I start thinking about, as I talk to people and I start thinking about the risks that countries face, it seems to me that there are quite a few. Let's start with the wonderful quote that Narya gave us, that your job is not going to be taken away by AI. It's going to be taken away by somebody who is using AI. Okay, and let's then think about what does that mean for inequality, since people who know how to use AI tend to be people who have higher levels of education and training. And we know in all developing countries that these tend to be the richer segments of society. So what are the implications of AI for economic inequality? I think that's something that we need to think about, right? And we want to make sure that the way AI is accessed, digital skills are accessed, is more equitable than has previously been the case. The other thing that I think we all think about is what is the data on which these tools are trained? We know as women, and it turns out that in this conversation we just have women, we know that many things are not designed for women. I was shocked when my daughters told me that apparently spacesuits are not designed for women. Most spacesuits are designed for men because it's men who go into space. So if you're a woman astronaut, you'll find that the spacesuit doesn't fit you because it's not designed for the female anatomy. I know as a short woman that most office furniture is not designed for me. I have to put my seat up or I have to sit on my haunches so that I can actually be seen above the table in many, many settings. So let's think about the kinds of data that AI is trained on. Is it fair to women? Is it fair to people who are not growing up in rich countries, because most of the data is coming from rich countries? That's the kind of thing that I think we do need to worry about. Are these models trained in a way that they are fair and balanced? And if not, what can be done to make sure that they are trained in a way that is fair and balanced? And then the third kind of risk that comes to my mind is really has to do with ethics, right? If the models are trained in such a way that they might have a bias against ethnic minorities, or then there are implications. If the default prediction or forecast or generation that it provides, the model provides, is based on a norm which tends to exclude people, then I think we do have an issue. What if an insurance company is using a model to predict whether, what your fee should be if you were to insure with them, and because it's trained on people who don't have some diseases and you have a certain disease, what if it, as a default, generates a premium that is way too high for you personally, and probably inefficient for society because it's excluding you from insurance? I think that's the sort of question we have to start thinking about. So there are lots of challenges and conundrums that new technologies such as this one throw up. And I think it behoves us as people who work on public policy, it behoves us to think about these issues. We need to think about these issues by training ourselves. And the last time I did anything on AI was 6 years ago. So I too am out of date and realize that I need to upskill myself. But we also need to be working with the best minds in the field, right? And think about these issues from a public policy perspective, not to sort of restrict the use of the technology, but to think about ways in which the technology can throw us into pitfalls, right? And try and put some guardrails around it. And I think that's why it's interesting what came out of the summit in the UK a week ago, and what is actually being announced virtually every day. I think companies themselves and governments themselves are thinking about how they're going to deal with this, right? And so we're seeing a lot of voluntary activity as well come out, because I think people are growing aware of some of the limitations of these new technologies and want to feel that they're on the right side of history, right? In proposing some of these changes. So I think all of this is very positive. Finally, I was delighted when we got this new song from the Beatles, right? And this was made possible by AI. This is because AI was able to enhance the voice of John Lennon and cut out the sound of the piano. So when I see examples of like that, I think to myself, wow, this has so much potential. It's really the technology for the future. The guardrails are important, but let's not also lose the thrill that we feel that we have this new technology which is going to generate new things for us, new solutions to old problems.
If I could just jump in.
Yes, please.
I just want, at the risk of sounding provocative, I also was so floored by that Beatles song, but then the Rolling Stones came out with a song too, and that was not AI, and I thought that might have been better. So I don't know about the debate between the Beatles and the Stones, but
you tweaked my Beatle interest, Mamta, because I was just thinking of the song Imagine, right? By Beatles. And I think, what both of you have given us is, how do we imagine or reimagine a world where AI is available and at the fingertips of everyone. And Mamta, thank you for sort of spotlighting the fact that there is, if we don't do that and we don't think of the issue of poverty and gender and race and language barriers, there is going to be a digital divide, and we're not going to be able to sort of minimize that and actually end that. And so thank you for that reminder. I wish we could continue, because this is getting into a space that I really want to talk about, which is music, Beatles, and AI. But sadly, we're kind of having to close. But I wanted to sort of maybe sum up with, for me, 2 takeaways, and maybe come back to each one of you for a minute reflection. Which is, the first thing, what I'm hearing is in terms of, because I also work for the World Bank, is what this means for governments, right? In terms of their investments, and the three things that that appears an important sort of investments that governments should think about is this kind of 3 types of technologies, right? To make sure that we're managing this trend. One is the need to invest in foundational technologies, right? This is what Mamta was talking about, so that everyone is able to access. There is data privacy, there is data access, and what is needed to have this foundation for the next set of investments in technology, which should be more functional. How then you translate these technologies into a good use that is helpful for society, for the youth especially. And it's when you have these 2 sets of layers of investments, you can then leapfrog into what I'm thinking frontier technology, right? This is generative AI and was what's still out there. So thinking about these layers of technological investments will be obviously important. But the second takeaway is that all of this can only happen, at least leveraging functional and frontier technologies, if we have good partnerships and solid partnerships, because the solutions lie in different pockets, in different institutions, in different communities. It could be even a small town in Senegal, as Nari you're talking about. So focusing on how we build this partnership so that we can really learn from each other and solve the problems that we hadn't anticipated with all the different types of technology coming to us seems to be critical. So it's the kind of types of investments that are required, and of course the partnerships. So with that, let me come back to both of you, Mamta and Naria, for a minute reflection before I close the session. Mamta, you want to go first?
Thank you, Ifat. My reflection is really that this is a very exciting field. This is an exciting moment when there's a lot happening. And because we're talking about solutions for youth employment, I want to make sure that we don't forget the point, and I think, Naria, you made it first, that it's youth who need to be involved and can provide the solutions for youth employment. I should go further and say this term co-creation, I think, really takes life when you talk about solutions for youth employment and bringing everyone in. And that's what I would like to see. I also want to say that we tend to think that this is something that's happening far away. It's, those of us who work on developing countries, it's happening far away. It's happening in the rich world. Actually, it is so much innovation and excitement around these new technologies, so much co-creation that's happening in the developing world. We should really learn from it and harness it. Sorry, that was more than 1 minute.
That's okay. Naria, over to you.
No, I wanted to just one reflection I wanted to make was just back on the back of Mamta's like excellent remarks about kind of the risks and the inequities and the potential bias and the lack of access. And I think that this is, definitely Microsoft's position, but others as well in the technology sector right now to really partner with governments, in a new and different way, to share what we're learning, to talk about the responsible frameworks that we're building so that we can at least help with the dialogue, because I do think this is going to have to be a multi-sector, all working together approach to make sure that we get this right, because I think the risks are pretty vast. And I was wondering, like all this at one point I thought, oh, well, if we can help people understand what potential bias is in the technology, because they're using it's just a tool to use. But ultimately, there's no other tool where I have to know, like a laptop, how does it work? I don't need to know that. Get into an elevator. I don't need to know how it works. And so for us to rely on the users to say, oh, you should understand that this could be, trained on some not great data, it's probably a leap too far. So I think we do really need to come up with that regulatory regime together. And I think there are good signals in the UK and the US and other countries as well. So I'm excited to see where that goes. My main thing is I think you're totally on point, Mamta, about young people and young people, you're at the center. And I would just ask every young person listening and every seasoned person as well, to use it, to try the technology, try the generative AI. So if you have not used it on OpenAI, on Bing Chat is also free and available to everyone with an internet connection. Try it out, like see what works, see what doesn't. What are some of the ways that you can kind of play around with it and see how it could be applied to your life. For us, we do have a little preview on some of our tools, and it's pretty astonishing, like the way that, it can help. I did one document, it saved me about 2 hours of work because I was able to use the Copilot function. So, and I'm trying to catalog, what am I going to do with that 2 hours? I'm going to go take a walk. So I do think there are really great opportunities. So my takeaway and ask to everybody is, go on Bing Chat, go to OpenAI, just give it a try, and then we'll all learn together.
Thank you so much, Naria, Mamta. Really, this is great to have this call to action, not just to use technology, but really to kind of bring youth into the discussion, and what better place but at the S4YE network, where we actually have youth as our partners. So with that, I want to sort of close this session and actually hand over the floor to our program manager of S4YE, Namita, to do the vote of thanks and close out this summit. Over to you, Namita. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was such a wonderful conversation, so rich. And I couldn't have hoped for a better end to the summit. So thank you very much, Mamta. Thank you, Naria. And thank you, Ifat. I think all that you said, both of you, Mamta and Naria, both of what you said, it underscores the importance of sort of addressing the youth employment agenda, the size and scale of it that you mentioned, Mamta, but also that it's been a stubborn development challenge, right? I mean, it's something that we've worked on for decades, but still it's looming large. But also what came through in the conversation was really the power of partnerships. And I think that in order for us to really address this agenda, just reflecting on all that you said, we need different partners because each partner brings. We need innovation. And I think our partner summit really highlighted how there's a lot of innovation happening around the world. And of course, we need young people. We need young people themselves. And my favorite part of the whole summit was just this session that we had, that really convinced me that youth are not just beneficiaries, they're actually solution creators. There was this fascinating young man from Nigeria, and he's really using AI to reimagine fashion and focusing on the elderly in the fashion industry. So it was just changing mindsets, changing paradigms. So thank you very much for this wonderful end to the summit. And I also want to say a big thank you to all of you who actively participated. We had over 1,000 people joining. That was really wonderful. We had people joining from 125 countries. We had 50 speakers, even though we had 2 short half days, but really there were a lot of lively spark conversations, short, sharp, just sort of scratching the surface. I think that there was a lot more in most of those presentations that we got to, but it was really energetic. So thank you very much. And as I just want to say to everyone who joined, you've heard from our Vice President, you heard from our Global Director, also from Naria. The World Bank is very committed to the youth employment agenda. So SRY is a partnership. And so if you are interested in partnering and joining hands with us, please do drop us a line. We really look forward to it. So thank you very much for joining once again. And with that, I'll close it. You will see the recording of a lot of the sessions uploaded on our website soon. So thank you very much.